Good afternoon, traders, or evening, or morning, or the wee hours whenever you're viewing this video. This is CloudChartist with your weekly Ichimoku wrap for the week ending February 12th. It's Sunday the 14th right now. The markets are closed tomorrow, except for the futures market is open for limited hours. But I thought I would get this done before other markets. The futures market is going to open anyway tonight, but China is back in town this evening. Should be very interesting especially to see what happens with crude. Crude, after putting in a low, cranked all the way up to 29, closed at over 29.50, but closed at 29.02. A lot of this potentially because of the contract rule. So it will be, and the ridiculous or potentially ridiculous OPEC rumor that came out and caused a ginormous short squeeze. So it will be interesting to see what, if any, of the move holds up when China comes to town. So I'm sure, I don't really understand the way the Chinese trade the crude market, but I can assume probably some of them have been short throughout their break and might be a little bit perturbed at the price currently, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, we'll talk more about crude when I get to crude, but right now I'm going to start off with the ES. This is the weekly chart of the ES. You see that just like last week, ES is still bearish in Ichimoku terms. It's below the cloud. It's below the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen. The Tenkan-sen is the blue line in my video. This is the larger picture. I'll zoom in for you. Some people have been talking about head and shoulders top forming. I think, it's possible, of course. I found that on major indexes, I haven't really seen a good head and shoulders top work in maybe ever, but they tend to be fake out head and shoulders tops in my opinion, or in my experience. And the neckline is a little tenuous here. I'm not thrilled with having to use all wicks for a neckline with head and shoulders. Like, you could try to draw a neckline including this October stab down into the cloud, and then you could try to use this spike down too, but then you don't really have a good spike here. I would be more inclined to want to use real candle bodies for my neckline, then you'd have to do something diagonal. We'll see what happens. If it does look like it's, if we do continue to sell from here, I might do the measured move just for fun to see what it's going to be, and it would probably be like, if you wanted to use something like 1850 as the neckline, you can do the math, 2134 minus 1850, that's your measured move down here. So, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So let me zoom in for you. Look at the current last week's candle, see what's going on. So last week we saw a new low put in down at, let's see, 1802.50, and a pretty healthy bounce. We closed at 1860, so 60-point bounce off the low. We do have a hammer candle. We do have a potential reversal candle from this new downtrend that just started. We were previously in an uptrend, and we were unable to get above the Tenkan-sen. The Tenkan-sen is the blue line here, and the Kijun-sen is the pink line. The Kijun-sen is over the Tenkan-sen, which is a bear cross. So if you hear me referring to bear crosses or bull crosses, if the pink line is above the blue line, that's a bear cross. If the blue line is above the pink line, that's a bull cross. So if we do see higher prices from here, we will find resistance most definitely at the Tenkan-sen. It's currently at 1938.75, but it could open lower in reflecting this downward price momentum. It could open, somewhere, I don't know, maybe 1920, 1915, something like that. This area obviously is an important bounce level, the 1915 area. You see a lot of bodies at this level, this body also. So that area could be a point of contention. Prior resistance, prior support turned resistance around the 1914, 1915 area. So be cautious of that one on the way up if we do find buyers. In order to confirm a reversal back up, we would need to make a higher high and a higher low. So we'll see if that happens. But otherwise, this chart is bearish, so we have to expect that the most obvious move would be lower. If we do go lower, we could expect to find potential support in this area where we did find support previously around the 1800s, 1802. See, this one was 1804.25, around that area. As far as what the cloud is saying, we have going forward a thinner cloud than we've had in the past, until really, well, we still have a thick cloud for the next candle that's going to open slightly. This area of the cloud is still pretty thick, but then we have this very thin cloud here. When clouds become thinner, they are representing a tighter trading range, tighter price action, and that is going to be the case for quite a while into the end of, the end of May. Then the cloud becomes thicker. We also have a couple of cloud twists. In cloud twists, if price action is near the cloud twist, it's a good area for price to potentially break through. So we could see price breaking through to the upside in this cloud twist or this cloud twist. Or if price does manage to break up to the upside and stay above the cloud, it could break back down through this cloud twist. You see that where the cloud twist is very thin. And this area right here, between like May 1st or the end of April and the end of May, like the whole month of May, very thin cloud support. So if we happen to be up there near it, it could be significant. If we're down here, it won't be that significant. One other thing to point out is the cloud is flat above. Flats in Ichimoku represent an equilibrium and could attract price higher. It's like a magnet, so the closer you are to the flat, the greater the likelihood that price could be attracted to it. Right now we have the Kijun-sen pointing down and the Tenkan-sen pointing down. If one of them was flat, then there would be a case for the potential of price being attracted to those. In fact, we'll see. We could see the Kijun-sen go flat when the new weekly candle opens up, or not. We'll see what happens. That's just, I mean, whenever the Tenkan-sen or the Kijun-sen go flat in Ichimoku, it is a signal of mean reversion beginning. It doesn't always guarantee that price will head towards it. Sometimes the existing trend is just too strong and they'll stay flat for a while and then they'll point downwards or upwards, whichever the direction of the trend is. All right, so let's just quickly look at the daily on the ES before we go away. The daily shows that on Friday we did get a significant bounce up towards the Tenkan-sen. I was expecting the Tenkan-sen to offer resistance at 1865.88, but we did not get that high. We only got up to 1860.75. So the Tenkan-sen will continue to offer resistance on the daily time frame also. So do keep an eye on wherever the Tenkan-sen is when the new daily candle opens as well. It could. We could see the Tenkan-sen or the Kijun-sen flattening out here because respecting the uptrend that occurred on Friday. Anyway, let's go back to the weekly and get onto some other charts. I will go over crude next. I like to do crude pretty close to the beginning because I know some of my people only care about crude and they might as well skip the rest of my video. So let me get rid of these drawings. So crude on the weekly time frame, we see put in a new low last week, did hit oversold. We can see in the past that when crude has hit these oversold RSI on the weekly time frame, that it has been cause for a bounce, but you can see that it can stay oversold for quite a while. It stayed oversold all the way from the end of July until about a month. It stayed in this oversold condition, so you can't really depend on oversold. You can't really predict when the oversold might encourage a bounce necessarily. There's always the potential for RSI divergence. But so anyway, we do have a hammer candle, and we do have Tenkan-sen currently offering resistance at 32.22. So it will be very interesting to see what China does when it opens. If there is a continued short squeeze, then I would look for resistance at the Tenkan-sen at 32.22 or wherever it opens up when the new weekly candle opens. It will be interesting also to see where the Kijun-sen is at, because in the event that we were to blast through the 32.22, then we could find resistance up at wherever the Kijun-sen happens to be as well. That would be a pretty massive move, and I don't necessarily expect that, because overall crude is still bearish, 100% bearish in Ichimoku terms. And we notice that we have a cloud that is just continuing lower as well, which isn't a bullish sign either. So the only thing bullish about this chart is the fact that we have a big bottoming tail on this hammer. But otherwise, overall, completely bearish for crude. Let's go to the Russell. Geez, I have fibs everywhere. I'll leave those on. They're not too distracting. Maybe sort of interesting, actually. Let's go back and see why I did that. Okay, I was drawing fibs here from this swing low to this swing high, and showing that the 61.8 level was pretty significant. Not really, it wasn't really exact, but it's obviously a support and resistance level in this 1120 area. But so we're far below that right now, so let's ignore the fibs. We see that we are in an existing downtrend under the cloud, under the Tenkan-sen, under the Kijun-sen. Both the Tenkan-sen and Kijun-sen are pointing down. We're not yet oversold on the RSI, and we are putting in but we do have a hammer candle here occurring. So we could see a reversal to the upside based on the candlestick here. If we do get a reversal to the upside, I would look for potential resistance at this 1138.90, that general 1138 area, and then at the Kijun-sen, the Tenkan-sen, wherever the Tenkan-sen opens up, which could actually be maybe. I'm sorry, I don't mean to say 11:30. I meant to say 10:30. Could be around 10:30. Well, it's hard to guess where it's going to open up, but we'll see. But overall, bearish for the Russell. Let's look at the NASDAQ. NASDAQ put in a pretty voracious bounce on, let's look on the daily on Friday. Some tech names were definitely getting, and some NASDAQ players were definitely getting bought up. I saw some Google was getting bought, Amazon. So we did on the daily time frame have a green candle anyway, and we are in an uptrend on the daily, but we do have resistance at the Tenkan-sen above, and overall this chart is fully bearish. Let's go back to the weekly. Weekly, we see that price action is under the cloud, under the Tenkan-sen, under the Kijun-sen. We did just get a bear cross last week, and the Chikou, this red line here representing price action time shifted 26 periods into the past, does have support in the cloud. So if the Chikou, if we did get selling, in fact, we did get selling all the way down so that the Chikou did test the bottom of the cloud here. And look what happened. We got a bounce. And the Chikou closed back inside the cloud and also tilted itself sideways rather than pointing straight down. So this is quite a bullish reversal type candle. So we'll see what happens this week, whether we put in a higher high and a higher low, and we can look for resistance at the bottom of the flat cloud at 41, let's call it 4184, 4185 area. Let's look at the Dow. The Dow put in a hammer candle as well, not quite as bullish as the NASDAQ. We do have a bear cross above here, the Kijun-sen being crossed over the Tenkan-sen. If we do continue higher, we will find resistance at the Tenkan Sen at 16,550 or wherever it opens up. The Chikou has no support here. If we do get a bounce, though, the Chikou will run into the bottom of this candle here at the 16, let's call it 16,400 level. That was obviously prior resistance. You can see from all of these multiple times that we were unable to get above that level. I'm not saying exactly that number, but that general vicinity. We do have flat clouds above. We have a cloud twist here, and we have a pretty sideways looking cloud, thin and sideways looking cloud here, so it would not be surprising to see sideways action for the Dow on the weekly time frame. But since it's overall bearish, we could see lower prices quite easily, and I would look to the lows to offer potential support. Let's go to some bonds. Very interesting action on the bonds, on the 30-year Treasury bond for the last couple days. We did have a 30-year auction last week that was not as strong as they have been lately, which is pretty interesting. I won't go into the details about that because I will sound foolish because I'm not really good at it, but various factors about the auction were not particularly bullish, and the 30-year did sell off on that auction. So what we're left with on the weekly is a very large topping tail. In fact, the tail is longer than the body of the candle here. That is a top. That's what a top looks like, and so we'll see what happens. Whether or not we see continued weakness in the bonds, or if this is just a pullback. Bonds have been incredibly strong. They're heading up towards oversold on the RSI, but aren't quite there yet. The Tenkan Sen and the Kijun Sen are pointing very straight up at a very strong angle. When I see this on Ichimoku chart, I usually expect some amount of mean reversion back towards the cloud, as we're quite extended above the cloud. We were really extended when we were up here. And another clue to that will be when the new candle opens up, whether or not either the Tenkan Sen or the Kijun Sen flattens out. I don't expect them to go fully flat, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this angle be slightly less straight up. You know, the angle calm down a little bit because of this selling that came in after we put in the high. Let's look at the daily just for fun. Getting like the 2-for-1 video here tonight. So this is a classic pullback to Tenkan Sen buy setup on the daily time frame for the 30-year Treasury bond. And some factors that I like to see when I'm looking for this type of setup are an overbought condition, which we had because of this humongous up move. I mean, this is really a very impressive up move. So after we put in the top up here, we did see the RSI go back to below my line here, signaling that it's not quite as overbought as it was previously. And so we're looking for a potential test of the Tenkan Sen off this pattern, which is currently at 165.27. Sorry. If we are able to hold the Tenkan Sen here, then I would expect higher prices from the 30-year on the daily time frame. We do have a rising cloud to support that, but we'll just have to see what happens. Let's go back to the weekly. I don't want to get too confusing by switching time frames around. I hope that you're following me. If you're confused about what I'm talking about, but you enjoy my videos, I would suggest that you maybe check out my chat room, because I go over all of these interesting facets of Ichimoku charting all day from 8 to 4 in my chat room. And I don't know, some people seem to learn a lot. But so I think that's about it for the weekly. Just keep an eye on the Tenkan Sen if we do get a pullback on the weekly time frame as well. Let's check out the 10-year. Ooh, I have some nice fibs here on the the 10-year. It's interesting. So this is a good example of the way that I draw fibs. I tend to use the real candle bodies rather than the wicks, so that's how I did these fibs. Interesting to note that this candle sold down right under that 78.6 fib. May or may not be interesting to you. It's always interesting when fib levels are hit. All right, let's zoom in. So we have a very large topping tail on the weekly time frame for ZN. We have the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen pointing straight up, and we have a flat, thin cloud below. That is something that seeks mean reversion. It was way overextended when it was up here, but interestingly not overbought on the RSI here. We also have a flat cloud for quite a while into the future here. So we could expect to see some sideways action here. But then we have the cloud pointing up, in July and August. So that could signal higher prices, that this might be just a pause in the trek for higher prices. But in the context of this, whole time period, this is basically all of 2015 that we're looking at right here. You see that we're not really what seems to be a really strong up move is just getting back to the prices that we were at last year at this time. In fact, exactly at the prices that we were at this last year at this time, or slightly before this time, end of January. Then we had quite a strong down move. So if we are in an oscillation type pattern, then we could see, a down move here. And then we would look to see if it would be supported by the Tenkan-sen. Let's go to the metals. Gold has been on quite a rampage lately. It's pretty unusual in Ichimoku charting to see such a strong move that blasts through the cloud and stays above the cloud on the first try. What happened here, you can tell, is if you want to look at the Chikou, this red line here representing price action time shifted to the past. I mentioned this actually, I might have mentioned it last week, but I mentioned it during the week, that if we did go higher, that we might find resistance when the Chikou hit the top of the cloud, and look at that. Perfect. So the Chikou hit the top of the cloud, tried to break out, and it failed. And so we got this pullback here. The Chikou interacts with elements that affect current price. Little Ichimoku secret there for you. The Chikou is a really wonderful part of Ichimoku. Some people ignore it, take it off their charts. I think that's a foolish idea, personally. So what we have going forward is we have a flat cloud top below for gold. We're getting pretty overbought, but not really not fully overbought. Like, we're not redlining or anything like that, or blue lining on my charts on the RSI. But we have had a lot of buying here, so I would expect that we would have some sort of pullback and maybe flagging action before moving higher. Although that said, I am kind of surprised that we were able to blast over 1200 so easily. So there's obviously a fair amount of flight to safety, people buying gold here. I don't know. I mean, it's so much so that it's almost like people don't know. They don't have a clue how to be safe, so they just buy gold. But we'll see what happens going forward. But the flat cloud here should attract price lower, at least temporarily, but we'll see what happens. It's just very unusual, as I was saying, for price action to just blast through the cloud, especially a flat cloud like this, especially a cloud that's continuing lower. If we had a nice supportive rising cloud going up like this, then I can see us perhaps, it would be a more bullish setup. I mean, a lower cloud is not conducive for this uptrend, so it's obviously, it happened really fast. So let's look at silver. Silver has a nice rounded type bottom and not as bullish as crude. In fact, just barely broke into the cloud and finished inside the cloud, which is important. It didn't get rejected by the cloud, but I would be cautious going forward to see if silver gets under like the 1568 level. It could get rejected by the cloud and continue lower. We do have the Kijun-sen still bear crossed over the Tenkan-sen, but the Tenkan-sen is pointing up and could come up and try to go for a bull cross if silver continues higher into the cloud. We do have some prior resistance for silver around 16, and also, you know, we can't see the top of the resistance of the cloud here, so it's above. Maybe I'll squish it and see if we can. The cloud resistance coming up for this week is quite far ahead, 1705, something like that. So that would be a massive move. The Chikou over here is going to come into resistance here at 16 as well, making another reason why 16 might be difficult to get above for silver here. So be conscious of this cloud. If we're unable to stay inside the cloud and we do get popped back out of the cloud, then the cloud is going lower and lower into the future and bottoming out for the short term at around 1531. So that could be resistance if we are unable to stay inside the cloud as we move forward. Let's look at the Nikkei. The Nikkei has been very important in the markets lately. There's been speculations of the Bank of Japan manipulating their currency, which they won't own up to, which is not surprising. We do have, pretty bearish chart for the Nikkei on the weekly time frame. After we lost the cloud to the week before last, things looked pretty good actually here after we got this bounce back into the cloud, but we were unable to get over the Tenkan-sen and got rejected lower, and then tried to bounce a little bit and then got rejected lower. We did close significantly off the lows with this bottoming tail here, so we could see a potential reversal off this spike. If we do go higher, then we should find resistance at the 16,604 area, maybe potentially at the 16,795 level, and then also at the Tenkan-sen, wherever the Tenkan-sen opens up this week, and then the cloud above. We do have higher cloud coming up into the summertime, so if we do see a bounce in the markets, we could see the Nikkei following the contours of this cloud. Maybe moving up into this area, perhaps breaking through at one of the cloud twist areas, or not. We'll see. Let's look at the opposite of the Nikkei, which is the yen. I'll show you that as measured by the 6J contract, the yen futures contract. Saw a very big move for the yen last week after putting in this bullish candle after we almost tested the bottom of the cloud here. We blasted up over the cloud here and actually sold back off and were unable to close above the cloud. So that's sort of significant for the yen. In fact, I was talking about, I've been sort of harping on Twitter on saying, sell the yen, sell the yen. That's based on the USD-JPY chart, which I will show you next. But you see that the fact that we did not close above the cloud is not bullish, and that the yen remains in neutral territory because it closed inside the cloud. We do have a lower cloud ahead, so we have lower resistance going down to the 0.0087267 level where we have a flat cloud, but that's not for a few more weeks. But do keep an eye on this lower cloud top if you're trying to trade yen to the upside. Let's look at the dollar yen. The aspect that I was looking at on the dollar yen chart was not actually the weekly chart. I believe I was looking at the monthly chart. I was looking at the monthly Kijun Sen here. Monthly Kijun Sen's at 113.29. We closed at 113.18, so we closed below the monthly Kijun Sen so far, but I was expecting that level to, I do still expect that level to hold on the monthly time frame. We still have a couple more weeks before the month is over, so I'm thinking that dollar yen will hold the Kijun Sen on the monthly time frame, but only time will tell. See if that actually does happen. Just because of where it was that I've been looking at it. So on the back to the weekly time frame for dollar yen. This is bearish. A close below the cloud is bearish. We did find that the Chikou came down, tested the bottom of the cloud, and broke through slightly and then bounced back up, which is not surprising. So if we do get a reversal to the upside, then we will have some resistance here at the cloud at around 114.62. And then if we do manage to get back inside the cloud, we will find resistance at the Tenkan Sen, which where we found resistance before, which is currently at 117.26, but could very well open lower, reflecting this down move in last week's candle. All right, let's look at some grains. Start with corn. Jeez, I always look at this chart and I'm like, oh, just it's just sort of oscillating sideways under the cloud, bearishly, but not totally bearishly. I mean, it hasn't broken below this, say 355, 350, 355 level. It's just continuing sideways and finding support at that level. So still looks sideways. The clouds look sideways, flat and thin, just like the price action. We did, however, last week lose support of the Tenkan Sen. So it wouldn't be surprising if we tested the 357 level, which is real close anyway. We could retest these tail levels down here at 349, but we are going to have resistance at the Tenkan Sen at 364.13. If we do manage to get back over the Tenkan Sen 364.13, then we will have resistance above at the Kijun Sen at 374.13, and then at the cloud at about 385, 386 area. Let's look at some soybeans. Soybeans are did catch a little bit of a bounce last week, but were unable to get above the Tenkan Sen at 874.13, got rejected and closed slightly below the Tenkan Sen. So the Tenkan Sen will continue to offer at a resistance for soybeans in the event they try to move higher at 874.13 currently, and it could actually flatten out a little bit because of this bullish hammer type candle. And then we have the Kijun Sen also, which also could flatten out a little bit. So we'll see how those open up when the new candle opens. Let's look at oats. Oats put in a new low at 185.25 last week, and then put in a pretty vigorous bounce off the low. So we do have a hammer candle, potential reversal candle. If we do indeed get a confirmed reversal with a higher high and a higher low, I can expect that we would potentially find resistance at the Tenkan Sen, which is 210.50, but will probably be lower. I wouldn't be surprised to see it around the 205, 206 area. So if you are expecting a bounce on oats, do check and see where the Tenkan Sen is, because it will surely provide resistance. This chart is bearish in always Ichimoku. See, I got corn, beans, oats. Let's look at coffee. I didn't do wheat. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Coffee continues to move sideways, sort of oscillating a little bit. Last week we did come down and test the lows around 112.25 area. Let's see the exact low. Yeah, 112.50. And then we did put in a bounce off the lows. So we do have a bit of a hammer, but we're still under that 118.93 level. So still looking quite bearish for coffee. And if we do get a bounce higher, do potentially look to sell that 118.93 level or wherever the Tenkan Sen is when the new candle opens up. Let's see. You know, I haven't looked at Natty in a while. Let's take a look at Nat Gas. Also looking pretty darn bearish here. We were rejected after trying to bounce above the Tenkan Sen. We got rejected and closed pretty much near the lows on Natty, right at the top of this gap area. So we'll see what happens in the future, but things look pretty bearish for Nat Gas here in Ichimoku Charts. It's under everything. We've got a bear cross. Chicow doesn't have any support, and we're into the cloud. I feel like let's look at wheat. Yeah, wheat put in. I figured that would be the case. We put in a new low and hardly bounced out the lows, so wheat is looking pretty darn bearish. And it's not oversold yet. And but we do have kind of flat Tenkan Sen and Kijun Sen, which don't really seem to mean a lot to wheat at the moment. Let's look at the dollar. The dollar has been selling off quite dramatically, really, and now has moved from being bullish to being neutral in Ichimoku terms as we put in a close inside the cloud. After last week, we bounced up and still managed to close above the cloud. This week, we did put in a close inside the cloud. Do have some buyers coming in off the prior support area of 95.25 thereabouts. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if that 95.25 level holds for the dollar. We do have a flat kind of, well, we have a little spike actually this week, which is confluent with the Kijun Sen at, well, my screen's locked up, at, I don't know, wherever that level, here we go. Kijun Sen is at 96.56, so if we do get a bounce, look for that 96.56 level to potentially offer resistance for the dollar, or the DX contract anyway, going forward. And I think that's about it for futures contracts. I might do a separate stock video since I have an additional day to do so since the US stock market is closed on Monday. I'm also considering doing a webinar maybe on Monday afternoon. If that's something that you might be interested in, please do hit me up on Twitter or send me an email, cloudchartist@gmail.com, and let me know. And if you are watching this video on YouTube and you want to give me a thumbs up if you like the video, I would appreciate it. Always helps. There's some kind of situation where you get thumbs up, you get better bandwidth or some sort of thing like this on YouTube. So it's nice to get some positive reinforcements on YouTube. If you don't like my video and you want to give me a thumbs down, feel free to do that as well. But I would love an explanation if you choose to do so. And if you're interested in my service, please do check out my website, cloudchartist.com, or hit me up on Twitter, or I'm also on Facebook now. You can look for CloudChartist. I don't really do Facebook. I'm sort of new to that, so I don't have a clue as to how to do much on Facebook, but I am there. I don't have a lot there. So far, I'm just posting videos there for now. It is a way to get in touch with me, and And without further ado, I'll wrap up this video. Thank you for watching, and have a good rest of the weekend, and have a relaxing day off tomorrow, and get ready to go on Tuesday. Take care.